Hey guys, we're down in a machine shop today working on a project that's a little bit different from me. One of my customers is a knife maker and he's been experimenting making knives with Damascus steel, and he's asking me to blue that steel for him to put a finish on the metal, and I told him I'd do it. He worked with a local factory and he asked them if they would do a black oxide finish for him. They did, and the problem he ran into is with the black oxide, it literally was so black, so dark that it eliminated the typical grain or striations that you get from Damascus steel. So he brought the blade and the two bolsters over to me a while back, and we did some experimenting. I first tried to use my typical bluing techniques, which was actually pretty nice. I mean, it left a nice finish, but again, because of the darkness of the bluing, you couldn't really see that Damascus pattern or those striations that he was looking for. You could see them, but they weren't as vibrant or bright as he wanted them. So I tried an experiment with this Mark Lee slow rust blue chemical. I've actually have no experience with it. I've never used it. I ordered it special to do this project for him. So this whole thing is going to be a little bit of an experiment for me. We did try that slow rust bluing on one of the bolsters. Again, I didn't have a lot of experience with it, so I was trying to learn how to use it. It's a little bit, actually it's a pretty dramatically different process than I'm used to. And the results were actually pretty nice. It's still, the way I did it came out a little bit dark. So we're going to try this again today and play a little bit with the timing to see if we can't get those Damascus patterns to show more like what Dan is looking for. That's today's project. Because I did the experimenting with the bluing, I now have to go back and remove all that bluing so that I can get the base metal back down to the same white that the blade is. That way, when I apply the chemical to all three parts, the two bolsters and the knife blade, hopefully, though the plan is that they'll come out looking exactly the same. I'm going to just use my standard polishing techniques. I'm going to use a 320 paper. The reason I'm using the 320 is because that's what Dan did his final polish on. So I'm just going to follow that so that everything is the same as Dan had done it. Again, I've shown this in previous videos that I always try to add a little machine oil or a little oil to the sandpaper. It helps to lubricate, and it helps to carry away a lot of the contaminants when we're sanding or polishing. So, all right. So I'm doing this on my surface plate. Now, if you're not familiar with what a surface plate is, it's a flat granite plate that's ground at the factory to very close tolerances, and of course we'd use that with different measuring devices like a dial indicator or perhaps even a height gauge. So if we were trying to be particularly precise on some project we're working on, the surface plate helps us to get that more uniform dimension that we're looking for. Now, I'm not trying to be overly precise with this, but if I use the surface plate to do this, then I know that the surface itself is going to be relatively flat because it's such a small piece anyway that it'll be relatively flat, and then the reflection that the metal gives will be more mirror-like and few aberrations or shadows or poor light reflection when you look at it from any angle. So one of the problems with doing this and using the surface plate is surface plates don't like having oil on it, so I'm going to have to clean this up pretty well when I'm done. But let's give this a try. And once again, I'm only trying to remove the bluing. Oh, that's coming out really nice. And again, I'm fortunate that I know the level of polish that Dan put into it. I'm not going to repolish the knife blade. I'm going to use it just the way Dan gave it to me. The blade is dulled down a little bit since it's been in the shop, but I don't see that as a major issue at all when we start to do the bluing. I could be wrong, but I don't think so. All right, that looks good. Let's go ahead and try the other one. I don't know if you can see this, but you can see the sludge that kind of builds up on the paper. And I'd rather it end up on the paper. I'd still have it on the part too, don't misunderstand. But again, the oil helps carry away all those contaminants. Helps the sandpaper last a little bit longer too. Doesn't put in as deep or obvious a scratch. All kinds of reasons for using the oil. Let me get this done and I'll bring you back when we get ready to blue it. So I thought it might be interesting to talk a little bit more about this surface plate. With so much manufacturing going overseas and so much of the talent, the machinist talent disappearing, I thought it might be interesting just to share this with you. So I thought if you've never seen this before, why don't I give a couple minutes and just talk about the surface plates and what they are and how they're used a little more. I have to clean this. Again, I got some oil on it from doing the polishing. Grease Lightning, they are not a sponsor. I just love Grease Lightning because I love its ability to cut grease or to cut oils. So I want to get that oil out of the pores of the stone or out of the pores of the granite. So I'll just use that. Like I said, it cuts oils, cuts grease really well. So let's get that out of there. One of the problems with Grease Lightning is it leaves a little bit of a residue. It doesn't matter where I use it, there's always a little bit of a residue left, so I always have to go back and use a milder solution to clean that residue off. In this case, typically for surface plates, most of the inspectors that I've known over the last 40 years just use some kind of a glass cleaner. Because you want to make this surface so that it's smooth, not just smooth, so that it glides easily. So when you use your inspection gauges, that they don't stick, because there's nothing more frustrating than trying to measure something while the tool or gauging that you're using is sticking. Let's let that dry for a couple minutes. I'm going to use just a standard height gauge. What I want to just prove is how flat, or show you how flat these plates are designed to be. This plate that I bought it at auction. This belonged to a gun stock making factory down in New York, and a number of years back, these guys went out of business because, again, like I said, all this American manufacturing is just sort of disappearing. It was sad because I knew a lot of these guys, and we went down to the auction to see if we couldn't pick up some machines for our own shop. And they had this stone. They had a bunch of other equipment. I bought the stone down there. I bought this height gauge down there as well. Again, it's all sad because this stuff is pennies on the dollars. You know, compared to what these guys paid for, or what these companies paid for it. This is nice and smooth now, and you can see how nice this gauge just glides back and forth. So I have this dial indicator. It works in both directions, which a lot of them don't. So you like to have one that can operate in two different directions. Has this universal holder for different size shafts for the gauge. We just loosen it up and we put it in. At this point we can just move it up and down. And I'm not interested in doing huge amounts of inspection here. I just want to give you a sense of, again, how flat these plates are. There's a thumb wheel on the back that you crank it down, or you can crank it up depending on how you want to zero out the dial indicator. And I'm just going to crank it until the dial swings to 0. Once we got it to 0, I like to just kind of tap the thing a little bit to make sure that it holds 0. From this point, we're just going to move ourselves around the surface plate. We're hoping that it just stays at 0 everywhere we go. These things do wear. They do get little pockets in them if you inspect in the same location all the time. There's actually companies, or there were companies back in the day, that would come in and they would resurface your surface plate. Because again, if you're doing inspections, you want as true zeros as you can get. So we're just sort of working this around. And so far that needle hasn't moved a bit. Let me show you a close-up of that. I mean, this needle doesn't move at all, so it's a pretty reliable plate. I have two plates actually. One's a larger plate that I have down here. I haven't had opportunity to use it yet. Again, I got that at steep discount. Ruger was redoing their inspection processes, so they got rid of several of their older plates, and I got one of those as a result of that. And like I said, it's just been sitting on the floor and I haven't had a chance to use it yet. But anyway, so that's a surface plate. That's what they look like. That's how you think about them, and just thought you'd find that interesting. All right, let's get back to bluing.